Baylon Spector emerges in the middle linebacker competition. We got some clues on this special team situation and what's going on with Kaiir Elam at cornerback. We're breaking that down today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, a bunch to get into here as the Bills have completed their third day of practices to start 2023 training camp. And with that comes even more information to process, narratives to dig into, storylines to discuss, etc., etc. And that's what we're going to do here today on the podcast. We'll start with some Baylon Spector conversation. Then I want to get into some of the special team stuff that we learned from Matthew Smiley and Brandon Beane. Then I want to talk about Kaiir Elam and some of the other things that are happening at camp that we're picking up across the first 3 days, especially as it relates to position battles. But let's start with Mr. Baylon Spector. This is a wide open situation at middle linebacker, folks. Wide open. Tyrel Dodson's in the mix. Terrel Bernard's in the mix. And we learned today that Baylon Spector is very much in the mix. And so let's talk about Baylon Spector, who he is as a player, and just these dynamics overall. So the Bills get started with practice on Friday. And you start to see tweets from people that are there saying Baylon Spector's getting the first team reps. And then as practice moves along, he's still in there, getting all the first team reps on Friday at linebacker. Now, that doesn't mean he's won the competition, but 3 days now and 3 different candidates. Dodson on day 1, Bernard on day 2, Baylon Spector on day 3. And by all indications from anybody that was at practice, it sounds like he more than held his own and looked very good. Now, I can't wait to get my own eyes on that next week, but when you have that much of a consensus, it's probably true. So all this buzz is building throughout the day. And then Jordan Poyer has a press conference after practice and was asked about Baylon Spector. And Poyer said this. He said he's around the ball all the time. He's a good player, and it's been cool to see him grow year over year. And most important thing that he said is, and take control of the huddle when he's in there. We have heard time and time again from Sean McDermott that how these guys run the defense and take command and communicate is going to be critical in who's going to win the job. And we know Sean McDermott wants this middle linebacker to be the green dot player for the defense. The guy with the direct line of communication to Sean McDermott. It calls the defense, make sure everyone's lined up. And for Jordan Poyer, who's entering his 7th season on the team, an all-pro, for him to say he's around the ball all the time, he's a good player, I've loved seeing his growth year over year, and he takes control of the huddle when he's in there, that means a lot. That holds a lot of weight to me. And some of y'all, if this works, if Baylon Spector winds up winning this job, some of y'all can take a victory lap, because I've been asked a lot about Baylon Spector. I know he's got fans. I see your comments. I see your tweets and different correspondence that people have with me, and there's a lot of love out there for Baylon Spector. It's not something that's completely unforeseen. And some of y'all have been on top of this, and good for you. I mean, that's a great call out. He's very much in this mix. There's a lot that needs to play out, but it's very, very encouraging. So let's talk a little bit more about Baylon Spector, a player that I'm very familiar with, scouting him at Clemson very closely. When I was at the Draft Network, Clemson was one of the teams in my region, so I'm very well acquainted with him from his time at Clemson. Also got a chance to be around him at the Shrine Bowl in Vegas a few years ago. And so let's talk about him a little bit. 2022 7th-round pick by the Bills, 231 overall out of Clemson. Had a long career at Clemson, was there from 2017 until 2022. 52 games played, 21 starts. He has a master's degree in athletic leadership. And you could just see Sean McDermott loving that, right? Master's degree in athletic leadership. He's not super young for a second-year player, turns 25 in October. 6 foot and an eighth, 233 pounds, short arms, 31.5-inch arms, 10-inch hands. His RAS score, that's relative athleticism score, is a 9.18. That's an elite score. He's a very, very good athlete. Not really lacking anything when it comes to movement skills. And so let me read to you the summary section of my scouting report. I wrote this, I guess, earlier in 2022 before the Bills drafted him. And this is just a summary. So if you go to thedraftnetwork.com or you search Joe Marino, Baylon Spector, Draft Network, you can read the entire report. But just the summary here says, Baylon Spector comes from a family full of Clemson Tigers, and his father, brother, and sisters are all graduates. Spector played quarterback and safety in high school and began his career at Clemson as a reserve and special teams player before getting a chance to start in 2020 and 2021, where he performed well. Spector is a sound processor that holds his own in zone coverage and thrives in a pursuit style and gap shooting role as a run defender. He is a physical and urgent player with a motor that always runs hot. As for concerns, Spector has modest length and block shedding skills. He isn't a consistent stack and shed defender that plays with extension to navigate his way through traffic. He's also not an interchangeable linebacker that is a lineup anywhere, do everything guy. He does enter the NFL with good special teams experience and should be able to make an impact there while providing depth at linebacker. And what's fascinating to me about reading that summary is it doesn't feel all that different than what I said about Terrel Bernard and what I said about Dorian Williams. And so the Bills have drafted 3 pretty similar players at the position. And I remember after every single one of them being drafted, me saying something along the lines of, these guys don't feel like Edmonds replacements. They feel like MIlano replacements. But then I'm reminded of what Bobby Babich, the Bills linebackers coach, and Brandon Beane have both said about how they want to evolve the skill sets at linebacker for this defense. And you've heard them both say it's ideal to have 2 matchup linebackers if you can. Brandon Beane talking about, hey, you need to kind of thread this needle of being able to be firm enough downhill taking on blocks and defending the run, but also you really want to not be a matchup problem for the defense when facing the offense, right? He talked about some of the mismatches that the Chiefs and the Bengals have put Tremaine Edmonds in. And clearly they want this type of player. And I think once you can get yourself to understand that, you can come to terms more with these players that they've brought in, because this is what they want. This is the vision for the defense. And so it's quite clear that this rangy coverage space player, the Bills are kind of like, hey, we'd like to have 2 of those on the field. We don't need a traditional Mike. And I don't mean traditional in the sense of Jeremiah Trotter or Ray Lewis or, Mike Ditka, these big burly downhill guys. I'm talking a traditional Mike linebacker that in today's NFL can play in short zones, play downhill, has some size. They want these matchup guys. They want guys that can shoot gaps and run, and maybe they might get a little, have some trouble getting blocked a little bit. Not the biggest dudes, but guys that can really run and play in space and shoot gaps and have good speed on the second level. And so Baylon Spector just kind of fits this criteria. And there's obviously a long way to go here. There's been 3 practices. Each guy got their opportunity. We'll see how it evolves. We'll see what happens when the pads come on. We'll see what happens during preseason games. But this race is shaping up a little bit different than maybe we thought entering camp, where it was, hey, Terrel Bernard, Tyrel Dodson, Dorian Williams. Well, Dorian Williams is playing outside linebacker, and you've had 3 different days and 3 different starters here at Mike linebacker with a lot of praise for how Baylon Spector fared. Now, real quick on Baylon Spector's rookie season, because he's not a new player, right? This is his second season in the league. He only was active for 6 total games. Played 12 snaps total on defense. Every one of them came against Pittsburgh in week 5. Big blowout win for the Bills. He came in late. And then for the 6 games that he was active for, he did log 86 special team snaps and was on all 4 major phases of special teams. And so Baylon Spector making some noise here when it comes to this middle linebacker competition, and something that we're obviously going to be paying a very close paying a lot of close attention to the rest of the way. All right, folks, we got a bunch more to get to here, including special teams and Kaiir Elam after a quick word from eBay Motors. Our partners over at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy football picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Looking to make a smooth turn in fantasy football snake drafts with the last pick in the first round and first pick in the second round? You'll be guaranteed to have 2 of the surest performers by going all AFC West with Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams and Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Adams has proven he remains a reliable top selection in Las Vegas, while Mahomes will again operate with both the highest floor and ceiling among the standout luxury options at his position. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it, and they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go with eBay Guaranteed Fit. Everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, let's talk a little special teams here on this podcast. We got a chance on Friday morning to hear from Bill's special teams coordinator, Matthew Smiley, who, oh, by the way, coordinated the #1 special teams unit in the entire NFL last year in terms of DVOA, his first season as the full-time special teams coordinator, back for his second stint on the job. And he talked about some things that are pretty interesting. Obviously, the returner situation with Nyheim Hines out for the year, the new kickoff rule, and Brandon Beane also had some commentary there as well. So let's dive into those most notable takeaways. And so first of all, he was asked about the return situation where Nyheim Hines was going to be that guy. Obviously, he's out for the season. And he mentioned Deonte Harty and Khalil Shakir as guys that are in the mix, and said that Micah Hyde is the emergency returner only, which makes sense. Brandon Beane commented on Khalil Shakir. He did a radio spot with WGR 550. And he said that Shakir is a great decision maker and fielder. And he's right about that. We'll talk about that in a moment. Of course, Deonte Harty and his resume, he's been an all-pro return guy. So despite not having Nyheim Hines, you do have options here. And while Matthew Smiley didn't mention him, I saw some tweets from the Cover One guys that Darrynton Evans got reps on the punt return team as a returner. So I think you've got three players here in the mix between Harty, Shakir, and Evans to, replace Nyheim Hines. Now, real quick, I do want to look at some of their experience doing this work. Deonte Harty, so far in the NFL, has gained a pretty good amount of experience. 127 fielded punts, 86 of those returned, 41 fair catches. He does have 5 career muffs, 1 touchdown, and a 10.2 average on punt returns, 79 career kick returns for a 25.8 average. Khalil Shakir last year had a few games where he was the Bills' punt returner, right? It was Jamison Crowder, then he got injured, and it was Khalil Shakir, and then it became Nyheim Hines. Shakir, when he got his opportunities, had 1 kick return for 34 yards. He fielded 6 punts, 3 fair catches, 3 returns for 17 yards in the regular season. No muffs, had 6 fielded punts in the preseason. Again, no muffs. In college, he has experience as well. 36 career kick returns for an average of 21.1 yards, 48 fielded punts, 21 fair catches, 27 returns, 6.7 average, 2 muffs. And both of those muffs came as a freshman in 2018 with none since. And that's very, very encouraging. And then Darrynton Evans in college did not have any career punt returns, but did as a kick returner, 57 kick returns for a 25.6 average and 3 touchdowns. That's very good. And he does have 12 career kick returns in the NFL for an average of 22.4 yards, but no punt return experience. So I think that's your mix. And I don't know if Darrynton Evans is going to make this team. I think the Bills could wind up just rostering 4 running backs, and them being James Cook, Damian Harris, Latavius Murray, and then Reggie Gilliam is kind of the 4th guy as a fullback. But if the Bills really did want to carry 4 running backs like I thought they would with Nyheim Hines, Darrynton Evans coming in and potentially just being the kick returner and then leaning on Harty and Shakir for punt return might not be a bad plan. But again, I think you want to feel good about Darrynton Evans earning a spot on the 53 to do that before you kind of take that roster spot and commit it to just a guy who only does kick return. He'll have to be able to do more. So we'll learn a lot more about him in the coming weeks. But Harty, Shakir, and Evans, kind of your mix there. Now, on the new kickoff rule, Matthew Smiley talked about this and said that he doesn't see the new kickoff rule impacting roster decisions based around special teams because the same guys are still on punt units, and reiterated that they're a team that values special teams. And Brandon Beane has said as much as well. And so for those of you that might be thinking, well, the Bills roster players for just special teams, and you're when you say that, you're thinking about guys like Saran Neal, Tyler Medikevich, Cam Lewis, in the past, Jay Kumaro, Tywan Jones, like they roster those types of players that exist solely for special teams. And by all indications, they're going to continue to roster them because they're still value. They're still value, right? There's still the punt return. You still got to cover kicks, right? You still have to be able to return kicks. And it's interesting because Brandon Beane said that with Nyheim Hines in the mix, their plan was to return a lot of kicks. And that was something I suspected that would be the case, and something I hope to be the case. Like if you're going to create this rule that you can fair catch from anywhere and it goes to the 25, that may lead to the natural thing that everybody said is, look, that's a de-emphasis on the kick return. I would lean further into kick returns and say, hey, you don't care about covering kicks? Well, guess what? We're going to make you cover kicks, and we're going to make you tackle Nyheim Hines or Deonte Harty. So you don't care about it. Go ahead. We'll go ahead and take advantage of that. And Brandon Beane said as much. Now, how does that shift with no Nyheim Hines in the mix? I'm not sure. But you still have a very explosive guy there in Deonte Harty. Now, for me, with the return stuff, whether it's kick return, punt return, I love explosive returns. Don't get me wrong. But that's a bonus. What I really want is good decision-making and good ball handling. You need to know when to call a fair catch, when not to, when to field it, when not to. And you need to be able to catch it cleanly and take care of the football and make sure that Josh Allen gets the ball. The last thing you want to do is either give up a score, right? Have a kick return situation where your kick returner is not secure with the football and you think you're going to get the ball back after a score, and instead you turn it over to the other team, or potentially even worse is you stop them on defense. You force an opposing offense to punt. You think you're getting the ball back, and then because your punt returner can't cleanly take care of the football, you give it back to him, and you give it back to him way down the field. So, yeah, I love the explosive returns, but I want good decision-making and good fielding more than anything, and so that when Josh Allen's supposed to get the football, Josh Allen gets the football. I think the Bills are in pretty good shape here. Matthew Smiley also said that Tyler Medikavich should be back soon. One other thing that I have written down in my notes here is I know that some of y'all just don't care about special teams, and I don't understand that at all. I don't understand how you don't understand like how important this is to winning football games. And the NFL, the margins are really, really slim. They're slimmer than ever. And anything that you can do to find an advantage, you should do it. The average final score margin last year, 2022, was 9.7 points. That's the lowest for a full season in NFL history dating back to 1932. It's the tightest games have ever been. 57% of games last year were decided by one score, the highest percentage ever. The margins are slim. If there's something that you can take advantage of to be an advantage for you, you got to do it. And for the Bills, one of those areas that they explore is special teams, and I'm glad that they do, and you should too. All right, folks, we're going to talk about Kaiir Elam, some other roster battle check-ins, and some other comments here after a very, very quick break. All right, let's close out with some odds and ends here. Again, real quick, though, if you haven't done so already, please check out the Locked On Bills subtext community. Something that we started offering a few months ago. It's been incredible. Tons of you have taken advantage of it, and we're having so much fun. If you want to join, there's a link in the show notes for today, whether you're on YouTube or wherever you listen to the podcast. Just check out the show notes. You'll see a link to join the Locked On Bills subtext community, and basically it's text messaging with me. I could be a text message away from you, direct line. We could talk Bills football. Love doing that. I give you mass text messages all the time with some of my thoughts. My first reaction to all Bills news comes through the subtext community. We have some exclusive content, herd mentality priority. It has been so fun. Check it out. Again, a link in today's show notes to join the Locked On Bills subtext community. All right, a few odds and ends I want to get into here. The Bills did waive Cam Dantzler, cornerback. There was some appeal for him as a recent third-round pick. Started a little bit for Minnesota, got cut, went to the Commanders, got cut pretty quick, went to the Bills, got cut pretty quick. So 3 situations there where teams have moved on rather quickly from Cam Dantzler. I know he's had some injury issues, but he's been waived, and the Bills signed another cornerback in place of him, Kyron Brown. Brown was a 2019 UDFA out of Akron by the Jets. He bounced around between the Jets, Cowboys, and Titans over the last few years, has appeared in 4 NFL games with 1 start. I don't expect him to force the issue when it comes to making this roster. I think this move is probably good news for somebody like Alex Austin as a draft pick. But I still think that Alex Austin will need help to make this roster in terms of an injury, and we certainly don't want that. So it's still an uphill climb, but it is probably good news for Alex Austin. One note that I found interesting, courtesy of Eric Turner of Cover One, commenting on Siran Neal, saying that he looks like he's trimmed down a little bit, looks more lean and more explosive. And Siran Neal was already a really good athlete. Veteran, obviously, but he's getting that first opportunity to come in for Taron Johnson in the slot. And I know it's a question I've gotten a lot over the summer is, all right, Taron Johnson comes out, who comes in at slot? I think we're getting our answer in that it's Siran Neal. Also, some reports out there that the Bills are going to work out Andy Isabella, very fast wide receiver out of UMass. I think he was a second-round pick by the Cardinals a few years ago. If the Bills sign him, I'll talk more about him, but he's somewhat of a noteworthy player because he was a fairly high pick, but I think he's a very inconsistent player. You love the athleticism, but that's about all you love about Andy Isabella. He's small, doesn't run good routes, very inconsistent hands. We'll say more if we have to, but I know that he's coming in for a workout, courtesy of several reports. As far as the right guard competition, Osiris Torrence for a second day in a row was the starter at right guard between Mitch Morse and Spencer Brown. So that's 2 days in a row here where Osiris Torrence is getting the opportunity with the first team. Now, I think we're going to learn a lot more about these trench battles, and we haven't really talked much about the trenches, right? O-line or D-line. Once the pads come on, and maybe that'll be on Sunday, but I'm sure we'll get the pads on next week. I'll be there for 4 different practices next week, and so we'll get a really good close look at the trenches next week and see if the trend here continues to favor Osiris Torrence getting those reps. But for a second consecutive practice, he gets the opportunity at right guard over Ryan Bates. All right, I want to close by talking a little bit about this cornerback competition because it looks like Dane Jackson is the leader in the clubhouse. All 3 days, he's taken the most reps with the first team. You've seen Benford sprinkle in a little bit. You've seen Kaiir Elam sprinkle in a little bit. But it feels like Dane Jackson has been the primary snap taker with the first team defense by all the reports that we're getting. And I know that everybody wants Kaiir Elam to win this job, and I do too. And what's really interesting to me about Kaiir Elam is, well, not only is he the young first-round pick that they traded up to get that has the highest physical ceiling, and the most invested in to have him as a first-round pick, compared to a seventh-rounder in Dane Jackson, who's on a very small contract, and Christian Benford as a second-year player out of Villanova as a sixth-round pick. You know, you didn't draft Kaiir Elam in the first round for the guy you drafted a few years ago in the seventh round, the guy you drafted in the sixth round to start over him, right? That wasn't the plan. Now, good on Dane Jackson and Christian Benford for competing and, really making this hard. But we want to see Kaiir Elam play. And if he's not the best man for the job, I can live with that. But I haven't really seen any indications that he's not, right? I mean, we watched all 3 of these guys play last year. These aren't new players to the team. I know that they had some different challenges with Dane Jackson kind of having to be the CB1 until Trey White was back and healthy. But I'm not sure that there was that much that differentiated between Elam, Benford, and Jackson. In fact, I could say potentially Kaiir Elam made the most game-changing plays and really didn't give up much. But what's most interesting to me about this, and I want to give credit to Bruce Nolan for bringing this up on his podcast on Thursday, the Bruce exclusive part of the Buffalo Rumblings podcast feed, is in high leverage moments last year, the playoffs, the Bills started and rolled with Kaiir Elam. And Kaiir Elam played really well in the playoffs. So they kind of had this choice late last season as to who to play. And they rolled with Kaiir Elam. 2 playoff games combined, 56 coverage snaps. He gave up 2 catches on 5 targets for 8 yards with an interception and 2 run stuffs against the Bengals and Dolphins. And folks, the Bengals and Dolphins have really good wide receivers. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd for the Bengals. Dolphins have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. 56 coverage snaps in 2 games, gave up 2 catches for 8 yards on 5 targets with 1 interception and 2 run stuffs. They might not beat the Dolphins if it weren't for Kaiir Elam. And I know that a lot of guys didn't play well against Cincinnati. Kaiir Elam is not one of those guys. And so it's just interesting that you would build up to this point where that was your preferred option opposite of Tre'Davious White in the playoffs. He goes out and plays well. He's your first-round pick. Fast forward, and the guy's having to battle with Dane Jackson and Christian Benford for the job. And look, maybe this is all very intentional, right? The Bills don't draft a lot of players out of the SEC, not nearly as frequently as other teams do. We know that the Bills want to make sure that guys earn everything. Kaiir Elam's a big 5-star recruit that has NFL bloodlines that went to Florida. maybe there's a big part of this that is like making sure that he earns it, et cetera, right? You could see that potentially being an intentional thing that Sean McDermott's doing. And I'm certainly willing to let this play out. But I think we need to come to grips with the potential that this is Dane Jackson's job. Obviously, something we're going to be paying attention to very closely throughout the rest of camp and preseason. But I think we have to accept reality here a little bit. And again, maybe it's just all big intentional thing by Sean McDermott, but Dane Jackson's getting the reps right now. And that's different than what we've seen at right guard, where O'Cyrus Torrence has gotten 2 days, Ryan Bates has gotten 1. We've seen 3 different starters at middle linebacker in 3 days. It's pretty much been the Dane Jackson show with the first-team defense. If he's the best man for the job, then he's the best man for the job. But again, you didn't draft Kaiir Elam in the first round for him to not be able to beat out Dane Jackson and Christian Benford. We'll see how it all plays out. All right, folks, the Bills are off tomorrow on Saturday. Then they practice again on Sunday. And I am traveling on Sunday. So that's going to be a travel day for me coming into Western New York. I'll be at practice Monday, Tuesday, Thursday next week, in addition to the scrimmage on Sunday. And I cannot wait to give you firsthand observations after all 4 of those events. The next time you're going to hear from me is probably going to be after that Monday practice on the podcast feed. Obviously, I'll be plugged into the subtext and the and social media as well, Twitter and all that. So you can keep up with me there. But our next podcast is going to come after my first-hand observations on Monday after I observe practice. So don't miss anything. A busy week's coming up. We'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, share, and, of course, subscribe. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again after practice on Monday.